Oh, no, please.
Can't do anything about it.
There we go.
You're in the hot seat.
Hi, the tax tavern. Is that better?
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Hallman. I'm the board president here at the Downtown Association. And I want to welcome you all to our candidate forum for this year. Thank you for everyone showing up tonight. We want to give a special thanks to Pax Tavern for hosting us tonight. If you notice, the bar is open. Feel free. This is one of those forums that we want you to be very personal with your neighbors, get to know everybody. Feel free to get up, go to the bar whenever. The restrooms are in the back over here, just a little housekeeping duties. But we're really excited for everybody to be here tonight. I want to thank all the candidates for showing up tonight, and we really want to thank you for throwing your hat in the ring to serve and make Asheville continue to be this thriving, amazing place we all love. I'd like to introduce Bill Durr, one of our board members and one of the chairs of the Issues Committee. Bill, do you want to come up really quick and give us a note about the format?
Thank you, Ben. Again, good evening, everyone. This format is, I think, hopefully a little unique. I believe it's our second year doing this type of a format. We refer to it as a rotating roundtable, or some of you may refer to it as candidate speed dating. The candidates are going to move from table to table. So each candidate will move, one will move to two, two will move to three, so on. 8 moves to 1. Candidates, it's one of your first tests. We have a board member, an ADA board member at each table. Can I have the board members please raise your hand at each table? All right. We have an ADA board member at each table. They are going to get the conversation started this evening. They're going to start with a question based on some feedback that we have had from our members and downtown businesses. They're also going to keep the discussion focused and moving to ensure everyone who wants to ask a question has an opportunity to do so within the time limits that we are imposing. We want to try to be out of here by 7:30 tonight, probably 7:35 maybe, but 7:30 is what we're shooting for. We are going to give you a 2-minute and a 1-minute warning before we call time to switch tables. And to wrap up, we're going to offer the candidate, each candidate, an opportunity to give a 2-minute statement based on questions that they have fielded tonight. Again, thank you everyone for attending. We have a great attendance here. All of our seats are filled. If anybody in the back sees an open seat, please fill it in. I think there's a couple over here, so you can fill it in. There's 1 or 2 around. There's 1 here. So please feel free to fill in, jump in, and grab a seat. All right. With that, board members, you may ask your question.
Just so everyone knows, I'm Bryant, board member with the Asheville Downtown Association, so I'll be moderating questions at this particular table. So make sure everyone is ready. Okay. All right, so the first question that we have to ask you is, downtown through both property tax and sales tax revenue helps to support other areas of the city. What steps would you take to ensure downtown has the resources it needs to grow in a smart and sustainable way?
Right. So first let me introduce, I'm Vijay Kapoor, one of the candidates, obviously. I think that's a solid question. So what I do for a living, I do economic analysis for cities for a living, and I work kind of across the country. And what I have seen with cities is what's incredibly important is to have a very strong downtown. Obviously, that's sort of presumed in your question over there. But the cities that are doing very well have thriving downtowns, particularly in Asheville, given that it's really kind of the anchor for the region here. So I think there's a couple of things. And I should also say, by way of background, I grew up in Asheville. I lived here in the mid-'80s. My dad was the plant manager of the Westinghouse plant, which is now Eaton, down in South Asheville. So my mom used to take us down here to Pack Library, which was the only thing to really do back then in the mid-'80s, at least in my age, to do it. And obviously downtown has changed quite a bit on this. So a couple of things that I had heard kind of during the campaign and some concerns that people have in terms of downtown is both from the businesses down here. And I should say, too, I work in the Jackson building, I got my company based over here, so I'm downtown every day and see a lot of it. Concerns about parking. So you sort of have different issues here, right? You have kind of the infrastructure issues, the day-to-day stuff that cities have to have. You have infrastructure, the parking, the need to have companies downtown. They need to make sure this is still an economically vibrant place. Some of the concerns I'm hearing too from downtown realtors and otherwise are concerns that your rents are going up. The property issues that we're facing kind of across the city and affordability is happening here in downtown. One of the things that's really important to me is making sure that we have a very diverse, very diverse local economy. So we're not heavily dependent on, real estate or tourism. It's very important here to have. We certainly can't lose that. But I think it's to make sure that we have a downtown that is diverse as well in terms of what it serves, in terms of having strong residential component, strong commercial component, and a diversified commercial component. We just don't want to have a bunch of hotels want to locate over here, understandably. It's kind of the core of the city, but making sure that we have and encourage, I think, a sort of a diverse base here downtown.
Okay. Alrighty. Anyone at the table have any questions for Vijay?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Michael Green. I'm a principal with Wick and Green Plaza and formerly Wick and Green Jewelers, now Spicer Green Jewelers, and longtime resident of Asheville, and in fact live west. And besides my time in Winston-Salem when I was at Wake Forest, I've pretty much, and Rims Creek, I lived in Rims Creek for a time, but pretty much always lived west in Asheville. What one time was called Worst Asheville, now is Best Asheville.
That's right.
And in actual fact, my question is to you, Vijay, about affordable housing. Recently we've had tax revaluations on not only our downtown properties, but other properties that we own in Asheville. And I wanted to note for everybody that land costs are the same for everybody. And 2x4s cost the same for everybody nationwide. And in fact, as we have more hurricanes, they probably go up because of demand. So I wonder, what sort of thoughts do you have about taking the affordable housing concept and rethinking that so that we could maybe look for higher paying jobs, work on industries or movies or whatever? And I think the state of North Carolina has just reinstated, I believe, the tax credit for movies. So I'd love to hear you speak about that thought.
Right, and so I think, Michael, I think one of the big issues that I mentioned here is the need to have a diversified economy.
Yes.
Because if you do that, what you have is the ability to bring good jobs and good wages, and that's an incredibly important component. When I was a kid growing up over here, one of the benefits of being the plant manager's son was I was on the company softball team.
Oh, cool.
I was a bat boy. I didn't do much, but we played teams like Black & Decker, like Square D, and a lot of that that industrial base is gone here.
It's true.
It really has been. So the question for cities like Asheville and across the country is, what do we do about that? How do we attract good-paying jobs over here? I think there's a couple of areas in particular that we ought to be focused on. I'm a small business owner. I created my own company in February of 2008, which was probably the worst time in the world to do that. We didn't have a client for the first year. But Asheville has this entrepreneurial streak to it, and it always has. We attract people who come to Asheville without any jobs, right? They're going to make do here. And I think we need to encourage that entrepreneurial spirit, to bring folks here to be able to start their own companies here, or folks, and this I think goes in with the issue of the tourists as well here, is a lot of people want to move here. They visit here and they love it, right? They want to figure out a way that they can move here or come here. And what would be great is if we found some ability to work with the business community and also the TDA to think about ways of marketing Asheville, not just as a place to visit or retire, but a place to bring your business, right? A place to start your company, a place to bring a satellite or a part of your company here. Just today there was an article about a bike company starting a small plant or a small office here, employing about 50 people. And that's what I'm thinking here. I'm not thinking about bringing the next Boeing or Amazon or anything like that. But I think we have the opportunity here to really work on the entrepreneurial spirit and build on that. And I think the other area too is with climactic data. This is a green area. People are into that, and we've got the National Climactic Data Center here. And so I think being able to build on that, and the Collider's starting to do that already.
Right, absolutely.
But to encourage things like that as well, I think would be really important to Asheville. I mean, we're known as Beer City USA, which is great, but it would also be nice if we were known as Climate City as well.
You're absolutely right.
So, speaking about getting people to come here, I'm sure that the current controversy happening with the budget in the county would have possibly a negative effect or a positive effect if we do something effective about it. I know that you're in the budget industry, or that you do things like that for the cities. What can we do in our area to make our budget process much more transparent?
And that's a fantastic question. So again, I help cities across the country with their budgets for a living, and it has done a fair amount. I mean, one of the things that we haven't done here in Asheville that I'm really advocating for is we don't have a 5-year budget projection. So when we do on the operating, when we do budgets here, we only look at them for 1 year. But it's really important to understand, because of the way cities' budgets work, because of the expenditures, which are often related to employees, healthcare costs, and otherwise, that we need to look over this in a multi-year period. Because what happens in local governments is expenses tend to rise faster than revenues. And I think that's important to do, particularly if we're talking about adding new employees, like new police officers, or making any significant changes. Having that, having a 5-year projection out there would be really important. I think it'd be helpful as well for cities. It's a best practice in the world I live in, but it's important. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Please rotate to your next table.
Okay. It's good seeing you all. Take care. Take care.
Thanks,
Michael. Take care now. Thank you. Thank you. Fine. Thank you again. Thank you so much. Appreciate the kind words. All right, sounds good. I'm going to go see if I can figure out to get to 4. I don't want to screw it up.
There you go. Brian, Michael Green.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Thanks for being on the board.
Yeah, no, thank you. Glad to be here.
Where do you work?
I work downtown as a federal contractor meteorologist.
Oh, good. Perfect. So you're across the street from us.
Yes, I am.
Absolutely.
Yes, I by there every day.
That's great.
So, yeah,
That's great.
yeah, nice to
Good.
meet you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah. Here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dee.
Michael Green.
Nice to meet you, Michael. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Nice to meet you, Brian.
Meet you. Come on. Down.
I think they'll do a sound check for you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Are we ready? Okay. So the question that we have this round is that parking is the top concern for Asheville Downtown Association's members, both for their customers and for their employees. The city provides approximately 2,500 publicly available spaces in downtown. Greenville provides more than 6,000.
I know.
And Charleston provides nearly 9,000. How would you address this parking deficit to support downtown's small businesses?
Well, let me just say that one of the things that I want to do is to tap into the TDA funds and basically have some investment in infrastructure. One of my pet peeves, one of the things that I wanted to sign to was parking and parking garages. A lot of people say that the city can't do that, but you can do whatever you want to do. There's such a thing as negotiation, and they need to be paying into infrastructure, and parking decks are a great part of that. So my whole thing with the TDA is that I need at least 10% of that for things like infrastructure, the parking decks, and to add on. So also, one of the other things that I'd like to do, and I probably need to divert just a bit, is that I'd like to set up a wholly funded, a source of funding for a multimodal system and a trolley system like Greenville does, that we would provide at no cost, you see. One of the ways that I'd like to do this, let me just back up a moment, because I know that we have $30 per vehicle and our vehicle registration fees have gone up like 3 times in 16 months. I'd like to drop one of those $10 fees down. I'd like to assess maybe a half cent or 1 cent, have a referendum with Buncombe County, put together a multimodal and trolley system for downtown to get some of that lean off of the parking garages. But that's what I'd like to do. I'm kind of a forward-thinking person.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else at the table have a question? Go ahead.
So I've understood that parking has been considered to be a problem in Asheville, but the counter to that is if you create more parking downtown, you attract more vehicles, and you're going to create problems associated with that. How do you balance those issues?
Multimodal system that I just spoke about. That's speak of those in the same breath. There needs to be a trolley system throughout downtown to the pressure off of the parking decks. One of the things that I've noticed is the parking decks we have are ugly and they're not clean. That's what I want to do, is upkeep what we have. It looks bad. I know that there are other green infrastructure things that we can do, like the gravel on the parking lots. I'm trained in green infrastructure and I installed them myself. But let me just say that a multimodal system is absolutely mandatory. We have to have that with a free trolley system throughout downtown. So that's what I would do. And of course need a wholly dedicated source and then pull one of those $10 registration fees up and 1 cent. That's what I want. And have the county to do the referendum. So land use planning, that's my other thing, to make it really effective, because I want to go between counties. And as I said, I'm a very forward-thinking person. The environment is what I care about also. So the parking decks, I'd like to just, what we've got, I'd like for them to look nicer, cleaner, smell better, you know what I mean? But I want a multimodal system with the trolley, absolutely throughout, free.
Dee, you have a really great idea, it sounds like, on getting money from the Tourist Development Authority. In thinking about that, though, they bring a lot of people to Asheville to start with, and so we don't want to lose our momentum there. I'm wondering, what's your feeling on short-term rentals? Because my wife and I have one in the county. We pay a lot of money to the TDA for that, and I think it's a great source of revenue. So I'm asking you, what's your feeling on short-term rentals?
I like them. I like short-term rentals. I like for them to be in the city. I like for them to be homestays or home hosting things. I've seen them hollow entire neighborhoods out when they aren't. And real estate investment trusts come and just buy them up and without any sort of conscience. But a lot of our people here in the city are using those to supplement their income just so they can stay in their home. So I'm a big fan. I'd like to offer some technical assistance and even direct some loan pool funds to them. Oh, I'm sorry. The infrastructure tax, multimodal, and also the transit system needs to be infused. And we have a silo approach to everything we do. And I'd like to, first of all, do some very adequate land use planning with Buncombe County and with Henderson County and contiguous counties so that we can become more connected. But that trolley is going to be paid out of that fund, and that's to get all these cars, a lot of them, off the street. And to reduce carbon. So yes, that.
Mrs. Williams, I really appreciate your stand on this and the idea behind green economics with having like a directed tax towards funding something, because actually to me it seems like Asheville is the ideal place for multimodal transportation because we've got so few veins going out of the city. We're not like a big place. There's really only 5 or 6 veins going out of the city. And how attractive would it be to go back to our old trolley systems, to have people going through towns, and so I really appreciate you talking about that. And I know that, people also don't want to talk about green taxation and taxing, people that move out of the city and, need infrastructure built or to have tolls going through places for people. We've got 2 interstates going right through our city. And so there's ways to create direct taxation that isn't about income tax is regressive. I know it's difficult to, no issue adheres to municipal or city or federal bounds or budgets, and the whole country's in tough with over 70% of our budget going to the military. So it's really hard to get money to trickle down, and I know you're really hamstrung with ways to get money. but the idea of investing in Asheville's infrastructure, like in our transit, we have to now, or it's gonna become too.
We have to pay for what we want. We can't. I don't know if y'all have seen Asheville in Motion plan, but one of the things when folks ask them how they're going to fund, they give some nebulous answer like, "We'll find a champion." No, we won't. We've got to plan and pay for what we want. So I'm willing to provide some ways, and I think we can do it. That's what I bring. I bring leadership and just thinking about how we can help our people and our environment and folks to keep making money and making it in a sustainable way. That's about it. Thank you. Time's up, y'all.
We have less than 2 minutes.
Well, ask me something else.
So, anyone else?
There's been a lot of talk about affordable housing, and to me, every time I hear the conversation, they ignore the paradox. If you want business to come in and you want to increase tourism, you're by definition you're going to increase the cost of property. So how do you intend to address those issues?
You have to balance. You're never going to have 100% affordable housing. Number one. The other part is that I am working on a community land trust right now. I'm the only person that's running who is. I've been begging the city for 3 years now, and they finally said, okay, let's bring Davis in from Burlington, and he's here, and we're working with him, Bernie Sanders' man. So we're setting one up. We're doing the legal paperwork now. That is an option for permanently affordable housing that actually works. We're going to probably bring Habitat in as a partner. And it's going to be, we have an algorithm, by the way. I'm big on data and algorithm, but anyway. And we want to prevent some displacement, but we want to also provide for our artists, too. So Southside seems like a perfect place. And it abuts the River Arts District, so I'm kind of excited about it. So that's one answer for you. And we also can take on public housing. The Land Trust is the only thing that can take on and convert public housing. So we're kind of looking forward to that as well.
So what about bringing in higher paying jobs?
Oh yes, absolutely. Let me say this, and I've been talking to council too about negotiating with hoteliers when they come in to pay a living wage. I don't know if y'all know this, but I went to Mission Health as a committee of one woman with 3 people, and we got Mission Health to not only remove the box that asks folks if they're felons for nonviolent crime, but also to pay everybody a living wage coming in the door. So I know how to get it done. Just put me out there. I'll do it.
Congratulations.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. Okay. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Had a good time. Thank y'all. Thank you. I had a wonderful time. Thank y'all. Y'all are great. Thank y'all.
Yeah, don't forget
Thank
Mel.
you.
Yeah, oh, he was going to shake your hand.
Oh, Peter, I'm so sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, how are
I'm
you doing?
Shanika. How is everybody?
Doing okay. I'm Brian.
Thank you.
Asheville
Hi, Brian.
Downtown Association. Thank you for being here. Yeah, go ahead.
Shelley Liebran. Sounds familiar. Peter, how are you? Hi. Thank you.
Shanika Michael Green.
Michael, nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Is the mic on?
Yeah.
I know it's on.
Yes.
I'm just joking.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so the question that we have for you at this table is, downtown infrastructure is another top concern amongst business owners.
Starts now.
Oh, well, we got it started ahead of time, so I'll start over. Downtown infrastructure is another top concern amongst business owners. While some progress is being made through the city's capital improvement budget, only a small fraction of recent bond monies were allocated for downtown projects, namely Haywood Street. How would you fund the growing need for improvement to downtown's infrastructure?
Downtown's infrastructure is a very a prioritized topic. When I returned to Asheville, well, first of all, let me say I grew up in Asheville. And I used to frequent downtown with my childhood friends, and we would catch the bus down here. And it was at the time where there were more pigeons than people downtown. And all the buildings were pretty much boarded up. But when I returned to Asheville in 2011, I noticed that Asheville had a different feel to it because our downtown area and our tourism industry had branded us as the economic leader in Western North Carolina. So as we're developing our city and tourism, our tourism is not known only around our nation, but around the world. I speak to a lot of people on the streets because I have an organization called Date My City. And Date My City was designed to bring more racial diversity to our downtown area because I think people look for racial diversity when they come to tourist attractions, especially in metropolitan cities. And that's one of the things that we're missing. But I see that our development is growing and is driving a lot of people to Asheville. And because of the industries in the downtown area, the workforce is growing downtown as well. So people, like thousands of people, are coming from the surrounding counties into Asheville, and that our infrastructure is taking a beating. But because we're having this conversation around tourism, I almost feel that the Tourist Product Development Fund should go towards our infrastructure. And if that can alleviate some of the monies within our capital improvement fund so that we can do other improvements downtown. Yes, the TDA, yes. The Product Development Fund, that's kind of housed within the TDA. And I think collaboration with that unit, because it's my understanding that City Council actually appoints members of the TDA, and I think just more tight-knit collaborations between that entity. We know that there is some state regulations about how the monies can be spent, but in order for us to remain the economic leader in Western North Carolina because of our great tourism, I think conversations around that fund would be most suitable to our infrastructure needs along with the bond money.
Okay, anyone have
Sure.
questions?
I'd like to follow up on that one if I might. The TDA percentage is 6% that tacked onto any hotel or stay.
Yes, sir.
The TDA does a great job in bringing lots of tourism here. In fact, when you and I grew up here, people didn't know Asheville, right? They never heard of it. You say on the phone, "Oh, Nashville?" No, Asheville with an A.
Except for natural healing.
Yeah, right.
People
But
know about Asheville.
but in actual fact, now pretty much the world knows Asheville.
Yes.
And I think the TDA has been responsible for that with the tax. So I'm curious to know how you would balance taking some of their funds with limiting and likely limiting their ability to bring more tourists. What would you do? How would you propose to make that balance?
I think, like I said before, I think that is a conversation. I think that's a conversation to be had with the tourist experts and then also the city leaders who have the best interests of our city and our downtown area as a neighborhood. I mean, our downtown area is a place where we house our visitors, but a lot of people live here as well. So we have to have those considerations.
What would you say to them during those talks?
During those talks, I think we would have to turn our direction and our focuses to be more people-centered and neighborhood-centered because the profits are here. And I believe that we've done a great job, that word of mouth and the advertisements that we have so far already have us in a spiral up. I believe that you have a continuum of marketing schemes that have to go forth in order for us to keep our standing as a tourist destination. But I think it wouldn't hurt us to at least scale back to see what will happen while we handle some of our business, which would be our infrastructure.
So, to me, there seems to be sort of a schizophrenia in Asheville about the tourist business, which is to say, on the one hand, you want tourists, but on the other hand, there's a lot of dissent about the number of hotels coming in and so on and so forth. It seems to me that with the tourism business, you've got to take as a given that there's going to be more service jobs, restaurants and the like, and those jobs tend to be lower pay. So how would you again sort of address the balance of wanting tourism but at the same time wanting to promote industry or businesses that don't just depend upon tourism?
Well, I work at Green Opportunities, and we're a workforce development organization. And at this time, our training programs, we have 2 training programs. One is around culinary art. So after training, we actually send members down into the downtown corridor to work. A lot of the people that we trained and graduated actually work down here. But what we're finding is that with the key industries around Asheville, there was a leakage study performed to see where the goods and services were going, the revenues were going outside of the state and going outside of our country to meet those needs. I think what we have here, there always be people who are interested in working in the service industry because that's some people's passion. Hospitality is some people's passion. But I think we can couple that with entrepreneurial solutions as well, and that's why I brought up that leakage study. If we were able to perform what's called an industry cluster in Asheville, where we're not going outside of Asheville to procure goods and services, but there's an opportunity for job creation and job expansion where people who work in the service industry, like most people, they work second jobs. But if these people were able to work downtown in our area to keep up our tourism, but then have jobs on the side or go back into their communities where they're worker co-ops, I think then the needs of our families will be met, and we'll also be able to support our tourism industry.
We got less than 2 minutes.
Shanika, I don't know much about you. I just wondered, like, in terms of running for city government, like, what's the biggest budget or group of people that you've been responsible for and managed?
For working, I've never, this is my first time within a political field, and I started off working in television and radio. Only when I moved to Asheville did I get a taste of the nonprofit world. And within the nonprofit world and working at Green Opportunities, I think that really gave me exposure to something more civic and community engaged, because it's a helping field. And that's what I see my leadership in this political field being, a helping field. And in that helping field, because I am an instructor and over a program, I do have access to a pretty large budget. And it takes a very clear eye because a budget really shines up the direction of an organization. The largest budget is usually where the mission's most interest is. But in my work in the nonprofit world, and also my work here, if and when I'm chosen to move on to be a public leader in this city, I think there are communities in the city who are underrepresented. And there is an opportunity for more minority business development. And one of the things that encouraged me to run was in 2016 when City Council adopted equity as its #1 priority moving forward. So my obligation is to bring my social justice lens and equity lens on our city government to make sure that Asheville is a city where all people are able to benefit from the economic uplift.
Yeah. Nice to see you, Shanika.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you for being here. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to 4.
I believe so.
Michael Green. Mark, nice to see you. Shelley.
Hi, Michael. Peter Elchi.
Peter Olchi.
Elchi.
Yep. Nice to see you. Yeah, native, and I've been here forever. We kind of started downtown.
I'm all right. How are you?
With Wicked Green Plaza in 1986. Kind of one of the first, if not the first. Yeah, right, exactly. How long have you been here? Nice. That's great. So, yeah, it's been around a decade. Yeah, so that's great.
All right.
Green.
Yeah. Martin.
Martin, nice to see
Nice to meet you. Martin Ramsey, everyone. Hi. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing y'all a little bit, but
It's okay.
Yes, no doubt.
Okay, time starts now.
All right. So the question that we have for you is that Asheville is unaffordable to too many. Please share your plans to ensure that citizens at all economic levels can thrive in Asheville.
well, I think there's kind of a two-pronged question here, and that's one is trying to get a handle on housing speculation, and I think one thing that we can do with that is not not unleash short-term rentals in our residential neighborhoods. I oppose opening them up in the commercial avenues of the city as well, along Haywood Road and the Rad Tip. It makes no sense for us to be pouring money into our transit system if we're going to be allowing the routes that transit system serves to be filled with people who aren't going to be using it. Like, we're just pouring money down the drain in that case. That said, that's one thing that we can do. I also am supportive of the community land trust because I think that we need to be utilizing city property in order to create a bulwark against the escalating land prices, because one of the problems is that it's just not as profitable to house poor people and working people. It just simply isn't. And, you know, developers are trying to make money. It's not rocket science, and, you know, they have like a margin to make, and we need institutions like land banking and community land trusts that are vigorously funded to change the incentive structure to make affordable housing a little more feasible, and try to use some of that city-owned property in order to fund those projects. I'm also for cooperative ownership. So instead of trying to figure out how to do rental properties that are permanently affordable or affordable for 5 years from now when they're finally built, we need to figure out how to be doing limited equity cooperative ownership. That's been happening in other cities around the country, and I think we should experiment with programs like that. Now, that's all supply side. Now, the other flip side of this question is salaries. We have a gap between medium wage and how much it costs to live in this town. And I've personally witnessed coworkers of mine whose leases have come up and they've had to just move to different cities because they cannot find places between the amount of time that they need to avoid homelessness in this town. And what we have to do there is try to figure out how to raise wages. And I think the city itself needs to maintain its commitment to being a living wage employer as the cost of living goes up, as just a general rule. And also, and this is not something specifically that the city needs to do, but I think we need to unionize our hospitality industry. We're a right-to-work state, so is Las Vegas. Las Vegas is absolutely 100% tourism and hospitality industry, and the only reason that all of the wealth isn't just being sucked out of all of those places, and there's actually good jobs to be had in those hotels, is because the hospitality union in that city is very powerful. And I think that we need to consider something like that. As a working person, I don't know what industries or businesses that y'all are in. So I realize that this might be a hostile suggestion. But I will say that there is no way that the city, under state law, can mandate minimum wages and that sort of thing the way that cities and municipalities and other parts of the country can. So the way that we're going to have to do that is with old-fashioned worker organization. And I don't see any way around that argument. So that's the honest answer. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. So anyone that has a question?
Sure. I'd like to follow up on something that you talked about Las Vegas. And they don't build those palaces out there giving money away. They build them by people losing money at the gambling tables and whatnot.
The house always wins.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. And so they have a vested interest to maybe pay the folks more. I think you were a self-avowed socialist in your
correct,
comment from the Citizen Times. I don't have a problem with that because I consider myself a social liberal, but a fiscal conservative. And so I'm trying to figure out how you might be able to balance the concept about both affordable housing and higher paying jobs and unions and all of that taking place. I find no congruity with that. So share with me.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase your question?
Sure. as a person who believes in basically everybody having the same thing, but some people being more equal than others, I would suspect if you're going to have unions determining now what we're going to be paying folks, and you're going to have affordable housing, but you're going to take the city land in order to provide that housing. After the first bit, if it's sold off, then it's going to be still subject to the same state regulations that are going to be taxed at the higher level. So you might have, as you mentioned, the first 5 years might be okay, but after that, it's not going to happen. Well, how does that all square for you?
Well, I think that's why I think that we need to be considering like cooperative equity ownership for affordable housing rather than rental ownership, so that the people who we're providing affordable housing have a stake and an ownership stake in the places where they live. And those models don't allow people to, I mean, you can, it's, as a red and like a socialist, I think that one of the problems is people are using their housing because their wages haven't gone up for decades as retirement funds, basically. They're banking. You got half of the city that's banking on escalating property value, right? And then the other half of the city that can't find places to live and is perversely hoping for a collapse in value so they can find places to live. So, like, that's a contradiction. And I'm not going to try to tell you that I can square every single contradiction that the modern economy has about whose economic rights and political rights gain precedence. I mean, I think that's a battle that the voters will decide, and I'm for collective organization. I don't think that's people being more equal than one another. That's a right that's inscribed under the National Labor Relations Act, and people ought to exercise it.
Okay, anyone else while we have less than 2 minutes?
I want to say, like, if you're honest speaking, you're talking about topics that aren't necessarily popular and are part of a larger discussion that I think often doesn't get talked about. So thanks. Yeah.
1 minute, yeah. 1 minute.
Okay, less than 1 minute.
Anything?
Anyone else have a question or comment?
Do you know much about land value taxation?
Well, I know that one of the major issues with our city, property tax wise, is that we're not allowed to charge differential rates on the value of property, which would create a progressive tax structure on the value of land. And I wish that we could do something like that. Unfortunately, municipalities have very constrained rules surrounding what kind of economic regulations and what kind of property taxation is allowable in the state. And that makes blanket like taxation and economic regulation kind of the rule of thumb for city government across the board, and that creates real problems. And raising property taxes in order to fund programs has the converse effect of affecting people who have fixed income, retirees, legacy homeowners, and that sort of thing. And I don't want to see that happen either, because people who've lived here for 40 years ought to be able to live in the community that they've made a home in.
That was my concern when you talked about the people using their home for retirement income.
Yeah.
But as it goes up, it's just like
I'm not
goes down.
trying to say that it doesn't make, under the circumstances, it makes logical sense. I understand why people are doing it, but, it also has, negative externalities as well that are cascading. Anyway, thank you for having me. I work at Early Girl.
That's great. So you're up straight from Wicked Green or Spicer.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, folks.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
And in fact, that used to be the original.
Pleasure to meet you all.
That used to be the original Wicked Green back there.
Oh, yeah?
8.5 Wall Street.
Well, I remember, I've seen old photographs. It used to be a photograph
Fall where you went in
Yeah.
on that, then there's the hallway down the side, and then Wicked Green was in the back.
Nice talking to you.
Thank you. Come on in. You're fine.
Esther.
You're fine. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Very good. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Come on
Okay,
down.
I'm down there.
Okay. Okay. So we're now past the halfway point. So we're now on question number 5 here. So the question that we have at this table is, how can the city support homeless resource providers while
How can the city support
homeless
Homeless,
resource
okay.
providers while balancing the concerns of downtown businesses?
Okay, so let's, I want to hear from you guys about what you think about this issue, but right now the city works in partnership with homeless resource providers, and the city itself doesn't actually house homeless people, but it works with people who provide services for the homeless. So we all know how that works. There's different ABCCM, there's different groups that provide these services that we work in partnership with. And then the city has its own strategic plan about ending homelessness in the city of Asheville. I think what your question is getting at is the conflict with who people perceive as homeless in downtown businesses and disrupting downtown businesses. This is a question sometimes we get. And so Asheville has a very small, true, chronic homeless population. It has a significant traveler population. Does everybody know what the difference is? Yeah, no, yes? Okay. So a couple of things have happened in the last year or so because this has become more accelerated. And one of the things that's happened is our police chief came and said, I got a problem downtown. I don't have enough staffing. And so we had a major discussion about whether or not to fund additional staffing for the police department to address that. So we kind of compromised. We didn't fund all of it at once. We're sort of phasing it in. And also the chief is working on retention because one of her problems is she needed such a dramatic increase because she has to make room for a pretty high level of attrition, which is not good. So we need to work on that. So recently, maybe 2 years ago, we did an inner-city visit to Fort Collins, Colorado, and they had a really interesting program out there where they have a nonprofit that partners with the city and it trains people to be like intermediaries. So if a business says, I got a homeless person, they're in my doorway and that's bad for my business and I need them to go away, they don't call the police. They call this nonprofit who has these trained community members who come and interact with this person and try to get them, they don't get arrested and taken to jail, which is not efficient and very costly. They try to make sure they're receiving the right services. There's a reason they're laying in your doorway, right? So some more effective approach to dealing with chronic, long-term disruption for downtown businesses and the needs of the homeless population. Anybody think? I've tried to suggest this idea to a couple of people, but it's going to take some serious work to get it off the ground.
Yeah, I was going to say to you, Esther, that's a great idea. I know that certainly there are a variety of churches do things for our downtown folks.
Yep.
First Presbyterian does Saturday Sanctuary, so that's taking care of things on Saturday. Haywood Street Congregation does things on Wednesdays. They serve the lunch and they have various things. I think Central Methodist does some things, and probably the Episcopal Church does some things. No idea about First Baptist, but the downtown churches, I think, do a lot of that.
Yep.
Also, we have downtown the Western North Carolina Rescue Mission. We have Homeward Bound. We have AHOPE. We have a lot of things that help support these folks downtown. But and so these are all wonderful things. Also, I would have to say to you though, as a property owner and business owner downtown, we have our areas become bathrooms, and we have to put no trespassing signs, and the police have to come around and pick them up. They're typically known. Some of them may be the travelers, and in the old days, I guess they called them hobos. But today, we are very open. But I do want to compliment the city council law about no panhandling in downtown. I think that's brilliant, and I think we need to get the word out about that, because as folks are always hitting up our tourists and our locals about, give me some money, We'd all like to help, but at the same time, that exacerbates the problem, in my opinion. So I think that's good.
Obviously, the problem of homelessness is multifaceted. Persons that are homeless for a variety of reasons. It could be mental issues. It could be drug addiction. It could be, other short-term issues. Do you feel that the responsibility for addressing the homeless condition is the proper responsibility of city government, or, as the gentleman was just suggesting, perhaps responsibility should reside with nonprofits, charitable institutions to reach out to them?
Frankly, America has the most bizarre way of dealing with homelessness, I think. I don't know about you all, but I think it's very odd. So in my position as mayor, I actually get interviewed quite a bit by journalists from Europe, and we do a lot of discussion about how they do housing and affordability and homelessness and drug addiction and mental health services and you name it in Europe, and they do it a lot better than we do. And so, if it were up to me, I don't mind paying a little more in taxes to provide services to people that need them. So it would be fine with me if it were more of a function of government and not a burden on nonprofits and churches to pick up the slack.
Just give us an example of what you mean in Europe.
Well, they have socialized medicine, so they have a way to provide for if it's a healthcare issue or an addiction issue, substance abuse problem. They also have housing. That's not something you have to struggle to secure. It's more. It's just it's completely inverted the way our system works. So I'm not hopeful that America is going to wake up and do it, but. Sure.
That's the other thing I was going to ask is there any possible way that you could work with Brownie and the county to even think about doing something outside of the box, like coming up with a county or a city public healthcare system that paid into? I don't know, like if states can do it, can cities do it? And I don't expect an answer. I just wanted to say that. And I also wanted to say thank you for such a well-governed city that we have and such good leadership. I appreciate that. The only thing I wish you wouldn't do is endorse other candidates as a sitting candidate, but I really appreciate everything you do as the mayor. Yeah.
Hi. I'm curious as to what, in the world of homelessness, the overwhelming success stories in long-term stable housing. Most people don't prefer to be homeless. Is there anything that you can think of in the short and long term for not just transitional long-term housing, but housing for people that is not reliant on them not being alcoholics or drug users? It's a functional system that's working, and the national homelessness coalitions have been using this model. What
the Housing First model?
Essentially, yes. Mm-hmm.
Which is something that our community supports. That I don't think there's any need to convince folks that work with homeless folks here that that's a good model to use. And really, our success story is with our VA. We now have the best service for homeless veterans. Far for hundreds of miles, which is actually why our homeless vet count has gone up, because people are coming here to be homeless vets here because our services are so good. So the next time you see that, go.
And they have a place to live.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Esther.
Okay.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
That was great. They have a place to work out there, and they teach them cooking, and it's an extension of AB Tech. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, but it's a really awesome program. Yeah, right. Intriguing. So. It's all right.
Hi, I'm Gwen Wisler.
Thank you for
What
being
is
here.
this?
It's a microphone. Michael Green.
Hi, Gwen Wisler.
Nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you.
thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And when he says begin, I'll read you the questions
Okay.
that we have.
Cool.
So, begin. A moment here.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
All right, candidates, we'll start the next round.
Okay. Alrighty, so the question we have here at this table is the expansion of the Asheville Police Department's downtown unit to 24/7 coverage of downtown, as well as the South French Broad neighborhood and River Arts District was controversial. What public safety priorities would you set as the expansion moves forward?
As the expansion of the police department?
The coverage of downtown.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, look, I think everybody in Asheville has the right to feel safe, including people who are potentially misbehaving. They need to feel safe around our police force, but also residents and workers need to feel safe. So it's a push-pull. I voted for the expansion of the downtown unit. And one of the reasons I voted positively for that was I really felt that it would allow that downtown unit to work in a community policing kind of format, that it's going to allow the officers to really get to know the residents, the workers, the business owners downtown, and community policing has been proven to be very effective. And so I felt when I made that vote that it would allow this unit to better community police, that they'd get to know, and they'll know what exactly, they'll know the people, and they'll know any particular issues. They're going to know where the, when bars close and things like that. That right now, without that downtown unit, what happens is on the hours when it's not fully staffed, they pull officers in from neighborhoods, and the neighborhood officers may not be as familiar with the people, and they're not going to be as effective unless they're working under a community policing umbrella.
Anyone at the table have a question for Gwen?
I think it's fair to say that some of the other folks that are running for council don't share your views about expansion of the police department. What do you think is going on there? Why don't they recognize the need the same way that you do?
I mean, I can't speak for other candidates. How they feel. I think that I think some people have issues just with police officers. And look, sometimes police officers don't behave appropriately. Now, our police officers any police officer has to wear a body cam, and we have policies and procedures around that body camera use that will allow auditing of interactions between police and the public. Furthermore, all of our officers are in process or completed a program with our revised use of force, and it's actually our revised use of force policy is actually being studied on a national basis. It's a real role model. So, we have to continue to make everybody that interacts with the Asheville Police Department feel safe and feel trusted. We need to trust each other, and that is not something that just gets fixed in a minute, and it's something you have to work on every day. And I have full faith that our APD is working toward that.
Well, Gwen, I'd like to say congratulations on your stand on that. You said something a second ago about the community that the police officers develop amongst themselves, and as they are more visible downtown and more cohesive, they can determine people who would be maybe chronic offenders or habituals or whatnot. I've been working downtown since 1975. Was involved in the renaissance of downtown, having been one of the principals making Wicken Green Plaza. In 1986 we did it. Yeah, thank you, Gwen. But I wanted to say that throughout this time, our officers know who these folks are by name, and so it's really helpful, I think, to be able to do that. And I think you said that not everybody needs to feel comfortable. Our neighbors need to feel comfortable. The folks that are on the street need to feel comfortable. Our merchants, our tourists, and our residents need to feel comfortable. We have folks that choose not to come downtown any longer because they feel it's not safe. That's the wrong kind of thing, right? Because we're all about the downtown being the most important. It's the heart of our city. And so we don't want people to feel unsafe. So I compliment you on doing that. I think it's awesome. Great job.
Well, and I think one of the benefits of a downtown police unit also is some of the needs of some of the residents in downtown are a little maybe different than the needs of people in the neighborhoods than Kenilworth. And if we have a community policing force, they're going to know about resources that will give them an alternative. You know, in a traditional policing environment, the only choice is to take somebody to jail. But if you get a community policing, they're going to be trained to know about what alternative places and opportunities to help people not go to jail. Because nobody wants that.
Right.
If you can.
Too expensive for one thing, right?
Right. And the APD works often with Mission Hospital. They work with MAHEC. They work with AHOPE to, know what the resources are out there for challenged folks.
We have we're streaming live on Facebook for WPVM right now. We have two questions that came in. One is, how would you clean up public housing and safety? And the second is, people, private business owners, to collect fees if people park on their property. So, two questions.
Okay. Okay, so we have, I believe, 10 housing communities, and those are controlled by the housing authority, and the city of Asheville doesn't really control housing. However, our police department we have a unit that is dedicated to the housing communities, and so again, emphasizing that idea of community policing so that people feel comfortable making a call and calling 911 and knowing that it's going to be an officer that they know. And so again, that I think helps build trust between the housing residents and police officers. So that's, and then we look at lighting and a lot of other things. Because it's important that everybody feels safe, not just people that live outside of housing, but people inside housing too. It's absolutely critical. I mean, it's a right you should have. So yes, I hope that more businesses will allow public parking when they don't need it in their business. And the city of Asheville works often to identify those businesses that have available parking. So we're certainly doing it in West Asheville right now, and I know that our parking department, our transportation department, is reaching out to businesses to see about that opportunity. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your coming. I hope I get your vote.
Yeah.
Thanks for your thoughtful service.
Thanks so much. Thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
And well done. You're the only one that asked for the close.
Oh.
Well done.
Hey, thank you. I have like my whole. So I'm at table. So I'm at 4. So
Hi there. Great. How are you?
Good.
Michael Green.
Michael Green.
Come
Kim
in.
Roney. Nice
Yeah,
to meet
great.
you.
Nice to see you as well.
I'm Bryant with Asheville Downtown Association.
Excellent. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for being here tonight.
For sure. Sure. My name is Kim Roney. I'm a service industry worker and a piano teacher. I helped to start 103.3 Asheville FM with a group of community radio advocates, and I served as a station manager there for 3 years. Volunteer unpaid. I started the AFM News Hour, and I covered city council meetings in 2015. So I've been to every city council meeting since January 2015 except for 2. I serve the city's Multimodal Transportation Commission and the Transit Commission, so I'm advocating for a more efficient transit system. Thank you everyone for being here. What's the question?
All right, so the question that we have for you is that short-term rentals are
let's do
currently allowed in the central business district. Recently, we are seeing an increase in both new and existing property in downtown becoming short-term rental. Please share your position on whether short-term rentals should be regulated with the central business district.
I have to say yes, and I know that that's really hard for some people to hear because they've invested in property downtown and it's their income generator. But I have so many friends in the service industry who used to live on Chicken Alley and used to live downtown that are now being pushed out, that still have to work here, so their driving and parking is leading to the increased parking and traffic problems that you're seeing. I also know that we are limited by the amount of space that we have in Asheville, so we have to get the workers to be as close as possible to work, not only for quality of life, which is something that I think that we all appreciate and enjoy. Because of the environmental concerns, we need to connect employees to employers, just like we need to connect customers to employers as well. I think there's an opportunity for us here, though. Homestays are permitted, and it's a process that works to keep people in their homes. I know people that this is very much the case. As a piano teacher, I'm the primary income provider in our home, and if something happened to me, Nathaniel wouldn't be able to afford to keep the roof over his head. He's a literally just starving artist, right? So if something happened to me, he could rent that room in my home, or our home, through the homestay process. But if that amount of space was over a garage apartment or a disconnected basement, he couldn't. And I understand that that's where folks are caught. We need to find a solution around permitting and bringing into compliance accessory dwelling units. And I think we can do this, one per person or per address, whichever is less, through a permitting system. And I'm also ready to hear more conversations that y'all would have around this that can strengthen my position. Because I know that we have the heart and the will to get this done right in a way that will hold water in court.
So it sounds like you are all about property rights in your own home, but maybe not for somebody downtown. So I would say to you, I don't happen to have a vacation rental downtown, but I do have a vacation rental in the county that's legal. And I have some downtown property that I may, in fact, build up on. And to do that, I would ask you why we couldn't do that if we have hotels downtown, and why it is that somebody, if they have their condo downtown and they spend part of the time in Florida and part of the time elsewhere, why they couldn't be allowed to rent their place otherwise, unless it's against the HOA of the condos. So I'd like to understand how you would think about regulating that.
I guess maybe I didn't fully express my position when you talk about property rights for myself. I think that the homestay process is working, and I would like to get the ADUs, like the situation you're talking about, into compliance. I think there's a way to do it. Another example would be maybe the folks that I know that are teaching at Asheville High School or Asheville Middle School, that they're trying to leave for a month. You know, I think there's a way for us to find a solution to that. But what I'm hearing more and more of is, let me give an example. A friend of mine recently is in a situation where they have to find a new apartment to be in, and it's really hard, and there's very few that they can actually afford. So they went and toured a place that's not in the central business district, and it was a home that had been divided into 3 separate apartments. So then they become the primary resident, but the property management company benefits from the homestay permit for the other 2 spots. Not the person who's living there, not the person who's the primary resident. So what I'm suggesting is that if we make Asheville's downtown play by the same rules as the rest of the city, even though I recognize that it is a business district, we will have more housing, which we really do need. And if we don't handle this correctly, we are going to see micro hotels, like we almost just saw at the last city council meeting, 20-room micro hotels along the spines of our neighborhood. They were looking at making that a use by right on Haywood Road and down in West Asheville. Merriman Avenue will be next, and then Charlotte Street is next, and then Swananoa River Road is next. So I want to make this work for the people of Asheville, and I think it's doable.
Any other questions?
Again, I just want to follow up on that. Now, you introduced the concept of motel.
Airbnbs, 20 rooms.
Okay.
Use by right was what they were looking at for Haywood Road.
Okay, so what is your position about that? Why is that objection? There is a shortage of hotel space in the city, and there's a need to address the burgeoning tourist industry. If you foreclose that as an option, basically it sounds like you're saying you're in favor of more hotels coming in to fill that gap.
I'm not in favor of more hotels coming in to fill a gap, and I will say that I went to the Strong Towns meeting. It was like a few months back. Did anyone go to that meeting with the Strong Towns? It was really interesting to see the numbers on what it means when you have a piece of